So this is mostly for the UK people. This is with regards to weapon laws in the UK. Printed off a few notes. I'm kind of cheating. Never really done a video like this before or anything like this before, to be honest with you. But I have for a long time completely and utterly been incapable of understanding why some of the things we're not allowed to carry are classed as offensive weapons. In the UK, just about anything you could carry with you can be classed as an offensive weapon. My keys, I have one key with half a love heart on it. Obviously my wife carries the other half around on her key ring. Now, if I was to hold that in the right way, potentially such as this, so that it could be used to cosh people, or, you know, maybe attach a piece of string to it so that I've got some sort of a flail, I could find myself, especially if I used it to defend myself or in a violent way, this can suddenly become an offensive weapon. That innocuous tiny little piece of metal, a charm, can become an offensive weapon. Now, I've got some examples of stuff that is classed and not classed as offensive weapons on the table. In the UK, if you were seen carrying this on the street, it's a cold steel fin bear. Bought it as an impulse, and it's horrible, plastic handle. But if you were carrying that on the street, you would find yourself in trouble, unless you had a reasonable excuse. Who defines reasonable? Me? I think it's perfectly reasonable to carry one of these around with me every day. I'm not going to stab someone with it unless I have absolutely no choice. I would not use it in self-defense unless I really, really didn't think I had any choice. Here's another example. I'm not entirely sure what that one's called. Oh, it's got its name written on it. That's a cold steel roach belly. I've got these two knives that are on offer. I think they were 30 quid for the pair, something like that. Neither of them are very nice. They're both stainless steel. I don't like the hold of either of them. That one's just, the handle, as you can see, is just nowhere near big enough for my hand. Any of these blades that I'm showing you at the minute, you could find yourself in some really bad trouble in the UK. Like I say, they say reasonable excuse. I think it's reasonable to be able to carry a knife of this sort of size around, a fixed blade one. Folding knives are inherently dangerous when you use them, especially the ones we're allowed to use in the UK. This is a Sog Seal Pup Elite. It's quite a pretty little knife. I never really use it because I know exactly what's going to happen when I start using it. It's going to lose its patina. And then that, to me, that is a reasonable knife to carry. It's 4 to 5 inches long. You can use it for all manner of stuff. I mean, if you get rid of the serrations, I hate serrations. This is where we start to get to the point where it gets unreasonable. There's no need for anyone to carry that. I mean, look at the size of it. If I turn my head sideways, I can stab right through my head and out the back with it. It's not particularly functional. It's pretty good for cutting wood because it is so big and heavy and strong. It's a full tang knife. I think all of my knives are full tang. I don't like rat tail tangs or anything like that. They just got an inherent weakness in them, and they will let you down when you need them the most. But you guys can see there's a big difference between these two blades. This one is functional. It's light enough to use. It's small. You can batten wood with it. You can probably just about manage to do some fine carving tasks, make yourself a spoon or a fork or something to eat with, trapping. This is just too big. The blade is probably upwards of 5mm thick. To me, that's an offensive weapon. That's something that you shouldn't be allowed to walk around the street with because it's just too big. It's not useful. The smaller knives, the two cold steel knives, they're not too bad. You know, they're both comparable to your average mid-sized kitchen knife. And contrary to what the UK lawmakers seem to believe, every single person on the face of the earth has access to a kitchen knife about the same size as one of these. This is a kitchen knife from our kitchen. Now, there's the race issue. I'm not even going to bring that up because I know the kind of the trouble that kicks off from race issues in this country. But I will say most of the stabbings and murders seem to be black boys stabbing and murdering black boys, or black boys stabbing and murdering white boys. Why should that apply to me? I'm 40, I've got my own house, I run my own business, and tarring me with the same brush as a bunch of boys that run around on the estate in the middle of a city stabbing people because they dissed each other is just, it's unfair. Some of you have probably noticed in other videos, I've got a colourful past. I have been in trouble with the law before, and where you, with no criminal record, might just get away with carrying something like that in the woods. I honestly don't think I would. Now, that's my problem. I was the one that decided to break the law. I've done my time for it. An example of a legal carry UK weapon is my bird. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether this is still a UK legal carry weapon. It has two blades. And the definition of a legal, or a pocket knife, they call it in law in the UK, is a folding non-locking blade, or a folding non-locking knife with a blade length of less than 3 inches. I'm going to try and do this so that you can actually see it. I've got to do it backwards. That blade is 2.5 inches. Both of these blades are 2.5 inches. Now, the thing that irritates me is this knife has 2 blades on it. Now, does that mean, this is how bad the law in the UK can be, does that mean I'm actually carrying a knife that has a 4-inch blade? And even though it's not much more than a penknife, most of you American guys get to carry a 3 or 4-inch locking blade. Because this has got 2 blades on it, does that put me in the realms of it's actually illegal to carry this? There's no definition. I've researched and researched, so I'm going to go for it. It has 2 blades. One of them's serrated, one of them's straight. It's pretty sharp, it holds its edge well, it's light. It's one of the better knives, but it is 1/2 inch shorter than it needs to be on both blades. But hey, now these knives on the right, they're all, without a shadow of a doubt, you will find yourself in trouble if you are carrying that around, again, without a reasonable excuse. I'd love to know what reasonable excuse actually means. Either way, if you get caught with one of them knives on them, you are going to spend some time in a cell in a police station being interviewed, because it's not down to the police to charge you anymore, it's down to the CPS, so the police will have no choice but to arrest you. This knife is, I find myself struggling to use it for anything more than cutting pieces of string, because it does not lock. Now that can, in many situations, if you do not know how to use a knife like this, can fold up on your fingers. I know, I've done it. I folded an open nail up onto my hand when I was a child and did myself actually cut myself down to the bone with it. There's no scar there now because I was only about 10 when I did it. So these are all examples of knives that you will find yourself being arrested for carrying if you get caught out in public. The definition of carrying in a public place is any land that is publicly accessible. Any land that is publicly accessible. So the woods out back, the woods further down the road, a couple of miles away, they're all publicly accessible. So I can't legally take these to the woods. If I go to the woods to do a bit of bushcrafting, I really don't like the word bushcrafting, or woodsman or anything like that, it's just outside time to me. if I go to the woods with one of these knives to do a bit of outside time, cook myself a meal, light a fire, I'm potentially breaking the law by lighting the fire. I'm also breaking the law for carrying one of these with me. And there is no way for me to find out. The only way I could find out is to actually get caught by police doing what I'm doing in the woods, lighting a fire, cooking myself a meal, carrying one of these. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I tend to look on the darker side of the law, or the side where you're going to find yourself in trouble. If I was caught in the woods with one of these knives and I had a fire going, I would probably be done for some form of arson. My knife is no reasonable excuse. That's not a reasonable excuse for me to carry this knife, because I'm carrying this knife so that I can go into the woods and break the law by lighting a fire. So potentially this becomes even more dangerous. But one thing all of us people that have knives understand, given the choice between having one of these, which is, like I say, not much short of a kitchen knife, and one of these, which can potentially fold up on your hands. I know which one you guys would pick. Yeah, solid blade. It's never going to fold up on you. It's never going to do anything really to harm you unless you use it irresponsibly or foolishly. Always cut away from yourself. Always make sure that the centre of your body and your legs is well out of the way. The sheet's fallen down now. Some other examples of offensive weapons. Most of us have got one of these in our kitchen. We've got several knives, for a little tiny one to really quite big. That's the one I use the most. It cuts through vegetables and meat really quite nicely. It's long enough to cut long things or larger things. It's got a good edge all the way along. I haven't sharpened them since I bought them because they're holding quite a good edge. These are the knives that people use to stab each other with. These are the knives that people get hold of. People very rarely, feel free to correct me if you're wrong, but I don't think many people get stabbed with knives like these. This is designed for Navy SEALs, as far as I'm aware. Now, they're basically trained killers, so this knife is designed for potentially combat and killing people. This one's designed for cutting meat. So this one's designed to kill people. This one's designed for cutting meat. What's my arm made of? What's my chest made of? Meat. In the UK now, you have to be over 18 to buy a plastic knife and fork set. Over 18 to buy a plastic knife and fork set. Potentially you're about to start hearing some harsh language from me, but what the f is wrong with these people? My 10-year-old son can take that out of the house any time he's here. Any time he's here. How is stopping people from buying knives because they're under 18? How the f is that going to stop my son from taking this knife out of my house? I can't watch him all of the time. I can't watch my 13-year-old daughter all of the time when she's here. She can take this knife out of the house. So them saying you're not allowed to buy a knife in the shop because you're under 18, it's not going to reduce violent crimes involving knives, is it? Because every house in the country has got something like this sitting around somewhere. Where do these people get their ideas from? Fortune cookies? I don't know. This is another one that's going to surprise you. That is an offensive weapon. In UK law, this is classed as a bladed object. So, here we have an offensive weapon. This is an offensive weapon. It's classed in the same realm as any of these knives here. This, however, is not an offensive weapon. Now, I've collected up quite a few tools over my time. This is one of the smaller screwdrivers. Some of you might recognise this if you've ever had a Vauxhall. It's a Vauxhall screwdriver. It's double-ended, so I've got a double stabbing weapon, I've got a flat-bladed stabbing weapon, and I've got a cross-headed stabbing weapon. Given the choice of being attacked with one of these, I'll take the butter knife, thanks very much. But this is an offensive weapon, this is not an offensive weapon. So this screwdriver, which once again, you should probably, I really should just leave the knives out. It's probably nearly as long as that. There you go, look at that. What's that, an inch short? I'm allowed to carry this. As far as I can work out, I don't need a reasonable excuse to carry a screwdriver. Obviously, if I was out late at night and I had a screwdriver and a torch, there's a crime in the UK called going equipped, which is basically going equipped to commit a crime. But it's very difficult to prove. And I mean, look at them. What is the difference? How much harder is it to do damage with someone with either of these two? Screwdriver's going to hurt. It's going to do a lot of damage. The knife is going to hurt and it's going to do a lot of damage. The difference is that is a screwdriver. I can use it, or potentially could use it to stab people with, and I can undo screws with it. This is a knife. I can potentially use it to stab people with. I can use it to prepare food. I can use it to prepare traps. I can use it for, the uses for a knife are unbelievable. I can use this knife to light fires with a fire steel, or even just a lump of rock I've picked up off of the floor. Yet this is a screwdriver, but I'm allowed to carry this. I'm not allowed to carry this. So I'm going to go through some of these notes now. Dictionary definition of culpability: guilt or blame that is deserved, i.e. it is your fault. So, using culpability, we all know in the free world, as a general rule, you are innocent until proven guilty. Now I'm going to read a paragraph out here from a wiki page. I've cross-referenced this paragraph to UK law and the Citizens Advice Bureau. Although English law insists that it is the responsibility of the prosecution to provide evidence proving a crime has been committed, an individual must provide evidence to prove they had a good reason or lawful authority for carrying an offensive weapon upon being detained. What that basically means is, when it comes down to offensive weapons, you are guilty until you are proven innocent, and that's in law. That's written in law. To carry one of these knives around with me, I'm guilty until I can prove that I was innocent. That to me, that was added in 1996, I think. This basically perversion of how the justice system's worked for forever, or for as long as I can. Another part of this that's even more amusing. I really don't understand. I've looked and looked for the definition, the legal definition of the phrase combat knife. A combat knife. I don't know what a combat knife is. I have a Zippo laying there on the table. Now, at the minute, it's just laying there on the table, so it's just a Zippo. Does that mean if I pick this Zippo up and use it somehow in a fight, I don't know, smash someone in the eye with it, bang them on the head with it, does that mean that's then a combat Zippo? Because that would be my kind of definition. This is a kitchen knife. Does that suddenly become a combat kitchen knife because I'm using it in a fight to defend myself, to defend my property? I don't know. I have a tape measure sitting on the desk over there. It's quite a big heavy duty one. Does that suddenly become a combat knife? Or are they talking about blades such as this? Or more importantly, I haven't got one laying around. I do have one somewhere. Are they talking about what a lot of people that are inexperienced and don't really ill-informed understand? Are they talking about Rambo knives? You know, big heavy duty blades that are associated with combat, rather than being associated as a knife. They're associated with combat. And I don't understand that. The Knives Act of 1997 prohibits the sale of combat knives and restricts the marketing of knives as offensive weapons. It's not the marketing that makes it an offensive weapon. It's the lunatic that grabs the knife and goes out and attacks someone with it that makes it an offensive weapon, not the marketing. You can market any one of these items on this table. You can market that as a death screwdriver. Excellent for combat. Easily concealable, obviously, when wearing sleeves. You can keep it in your sock. Not that you guys can see it, not that I can stand up. But so, if I advertise that as a combat screwdriver, does that mean I'm now breaking the Knives Act of 1997? I don't think I am, because this is just a screwdriver. But if I advertise any one of these fixed blade knives or folding knife as a combat weapon, I'm breaking the law. It beggars belief. I don't understand it. Another little part of, I think, I had trouble tracking this one down, the Knives Act of 1997. You need a license to sell anything but domestic knives. These are domestic knives. Butter knife, carving knife. Why? Why do you need a license to sell anything but that? Again, comparing the knives I've got in this knife block, we'll take the medium size one, we'll take the fin bear. Which one's more dangerous? Which one stands a better chance of killing you? I would say that one. It's not got a big, thick, heavy blade. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't know whether this camera's focusing, but you can see the blades are almost exactly the same length. The only difference is this one is flat grind, this one's slightly convex. No. So you've got a bit more beef towards the bottom of the knife with the fin bear than you have with the kitchen knife. But why do I need a license to sell this, but I don't need a license to sell this? When I go down to the smallest knife in our knife block, you're actually getting closer now to knives that fit. But again, why do I need a license to sell this but not this? They're exactly the same. I've actually used this to cut chicken breasts up in my kitchen when I made fajitas, because this one is not very good at it. This one is fine at it. Again, I think these things up. Why would you even waste the money of the public inventing laws like that? Another one, I've seen some guys who are pretty nifty with their folding knives. You know, they can do a small flick and it's open. It doesn't work with this one, the blade's too small. I have had in the past a folding knife that I could open very quickly with a flick of the hand. Even though some of these knives are legal, i.e. folding, non-locking and less than 3 inches, there are stories coming out now of them being confiscated because they can be opened like that quickly. Obviously I can't do it with this one, the blade's just not big or heavy enough. How can you confiscate a legal knife because someone has learned how to open it quickly? And what difference does it make how quickly you can open it when you can take this kitchen knife, wear a long sleeve top and walk around with it all day, tucked away with your little finger or a tiny piece of string or a tiny piece of cotton? Now, they showed me a dozen ways to carry a kitchen knife so that it's ready for action. I'm not going to show you any of them because I'll probably find myself getting banged up for it. But I can carry this knife in a way where a policeman will search me and he will not find it unless he does a really good job. And I've seen the policemen that police this country these days, and they're not much more than children. I haven't seen a policeman over 40 for a long time. So I don't understand why someone that's learned how to open their locking knife quickly can have their knife, or has bought a locking knife and not a folding knife that opens quickly. What they're basically saying is, if the knife opens quickly, it's the same as this. Much along the lines that a locking folding knife is classed legally in the UK the same as this. It's a fixed blade. It's not a fixed blade, it's a folding knife. I can't open this knife quickly at all. I have to mess around and pull it open. It's very stiff. I mean, that's done because it doesn't lock open. I've practiced with another knife, which I'll go and get. This is my son's Spyderco UK carry. Again, it doesn't lock. I really don't like using knives that don't lock open. It doesn't lock. And I can, from a part open, about there, flick it open pretty quick. But I can't get that first bit very quick. My hand's big. This knife is the size of my thumb. With a slightly bigger knife, you know, maybe a 4-inch. Let's check this one, see how big this one is. You can see even the makers of UK legal knives make them way, way shorter than they actually need to be to cover us. Well, probably cover themselves from being sued, but because I can do that, I can have this confiscated off of me. Or if a policeman can pick it up and learn how to flick it open quickly like that. There is one last thing I would say to anyone in this country, I know for certain: never, ever, ever stand up in court or tell a policeman that you were carrying that knife for self-defense. That instantly turns whatever it was into an offensive weapon, and you will be charged and you will be found guilty. But that's one of the biggest points I need to make to everybody. Never admit you carried a knife for self-defense. This is seen as an admission of carrying an offensive weapon, even though if you only used it in self-defense, it's actually a defensive weapon. If someone attacks me and I use this to protect myself, I'm sure anyone on the face of the earth with a piece of common sense will understand I was using this as a defensive weapon. A defensive weapon. I did not create that situation. Someone else came to me, someone else wanted to steal my money, attack me, after my bum, whatever the reason they come after me, and if I use this knife to defend myself, I should be perfectly legally entitled to do that, but I'm not. At that point, when I take this knife out of my pocket and I start using it to protect myself, it instantly turns into an offensive weapon, even though it's only being used as a defensive weapon. Thanks for taking the time to sit down and listen to me go on. I'm going to edit this video out, obviously, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm not going to be happy with. But, good stuff. This is the country that I live in. It's horrible. I don't like it, and hopefully within a year or two I'm going to be moving out of it and moving somewhere else, because it's very difficult to feel free in a country like this. Thanks guys. See you later.